in DC. You've been front and center, and I'm going to move over here so we can see the screen because I'm kind of hiding it here, used to standing right in front of the camera. You've been your own, the media around you and what you've been doing from your research and what your publications are has been astounding. And I just want to go through and talk about what you've been in the press about yourself. What will it take for women to win and get into the political game was something that was just in Politico, a great read. We'll hyperlink it if you're watching after the fact. But what will it take?
It takes a candidate. Basically, when women run for office, they do just as well as men. They receive just as many votes. They raise just as much money. Their media coverage looks very similar. The issue is that women are less likely than men to consider running for office in the first place. They're less likely to take the steps that are required. They're less likely to get recruited. And as a result, we just don't have a very, big supply of female candidates. And so a lot of people thought that Donald Trump was going to ultimately be this savior in a way, in that so many women were so angry by the Trump agenda and the way that he treats women that they would be motivated to throw their own hats into the ring. And what we found with this new poll that we conducted in May of this year was that it's true that women, especially Democratic women, are angry and they're appalled and they're depressed by Trump, and they are more active than they've ever been. But they're not very much more likely to consider running for office. The gender gap in political ambition is about the same size now as it was 15 years ago.
So you found this information by doing the polling. Now, as we're here, it's June of 17. Is there any potential? I mean, how do you move the needle? Does there have to be? Is it a grassroots effort? Is it a political group effort to try to again push these maybe likely politically active women forward?
Well, I think the main thing that we found was that political activism can be organic and it can be at the grassroots level, but when it comes to political ambition, you really need organizations and institutions formally recruiting female candidates. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's possible to see a record number of women running for office in 2018 and 2020, not because Donald Trump has made these women more ambitious, but because these politically active women are now ripe for the picking, and political gatekeepers can now say to them, all right, look, you're upset, let's run. So I think we need to sort of take the activism that he's started and ignited and couple it with the organizations that are interested in getting more women to run for office, because alone it's not going to happen.
Again, we'll provide the link to your piece, Jennifer, and it's just interesting. I mean, it's a snapshot in time and what you had taken from a data point. So we'll see, a year later where the female candidates are. But again, great data collection and just, being able to point to the evidence as to where we're at currently now in June 17. So we'll have to check that out. And then just release that. But coming up, you're going to be part of a talk, The Trump Effect. Talk to us a little bit about this. Who are you talking to and what are you going to be talking about?
So this is the Rhode Island talk. I'm going to be talking a little bit about this in Rhode Island on Thursday, but on Monday, June 26th, Richard Fox and I, who conducted this poll, will be speaking with the authors of the Politico article, who wrote the article based on the poll, at the National Press Club, and we'll basically be talking to journalists and citizens who are interested in what effects Donald Trump is having, not only on women's political ambition, but also on men's. What we really find is that Democrats are more excited and more eager to get involved in the political system than we've seen in a very, very long time. The unfortunate circumstances, however, are that it's anger and depression and being appalled that are motivating their activism. So those aren't necessarily circumstances that we want to embrace or replicate.
So this is, again, bigger than just the women in the politics picture. As you said, men in politics talking about what the Trump effect is. And you said you're going to talk a little bit about it on Thursday night. We've talked about it before. Going to make a little plug here. Women's Talk at the Pot of Pho Thursday night. Check it out. Go check out their Facebook page from 5 to 7. When are you getting into town, Jennifer?
Right before the talk.
Excellent. Okay, so if you're a woman, you're interested in politics, you are interested to hear what's going on inside the Beltway, you're interested in the Trump effect, it's going to be from 5 to 7. You can find out more information on Pot of Pho's Facebook page, website. They're right down here in Providence. Jennifer Lawless, if you enjoy watching her, will be here in person. So it's funny, Jennifer, as I mentioned, we had so much to talk about from just your standpoint and what you do in the world of politics. I said we need to kick off with that before we go to what's happening down in D.C. Never a dull moment. Sessions testifying. What's the talk down there today?
I just watched the first hour of the testimony, and this is not what we saw with James Comey last week. Sessions is angry, he's hostile, he's annoyed that he has to testify in front of this committee, and basically the Democrats on the committee don't believe a word he's saying. So it's unclear that we're going to learn anything new, but I think it does sort of set the stage for the way that this partisan fight is going to unfold. And we should step back and remember that the semblance of bipartisanship that we saw last week with James Comey's testimony is pretty atypical.
So as it was atypical, and one of the questions I had here in my notes, what is the result of the Comey testimony? You know, now that you can sort of, we all take a deep breath, step back, and kind of analyze it for what it is. You know, sometimes when we talk, it seems like it was like a year ago in political time. But what is sort of the encapsulation of what we had heard?
Well, I think there are two important pieces to come out of the testimony, broadly speaking. The first is that nobody on that committee, Democrat or Republican, didn't believe what James Comey said. And so what that suggests is that if ultimately this becomes a he said, where Donald Trump is ultimately subpoenaed or asked to testify, he's going to have a very rough time, because Comey came across as very, very credible, as very reliable, and as basically somebody who felt like he was wronged and that the Justice Department was wronged, and he was coming out to right those wrongs. Donald Trump does not have a track record of being a truth teller, and so he loses a he said fight. The second thing that came out of it, I think, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of debate about whether Donald Trump said the things that Comey said he said, right? There doesn't seem to be a lot of discussion as to whether it's true that Donald Trump said he hoped Comey would shut down the Flynn investigation. And what that means is that the investigation moves now really into the legal minutia of, is that obstruction of justice? And you know, that's going to take a very long time to figure out, and it's going to involve Bob Mueller probably speaking to hundreds of people and looking at thousands of documents.
And speaking of Mueller, talking about the Trump, even hearing just sort of speculation that Trump could possibly be interested in dismissing him, could that even possibly happen? But this, again, this is the Trump administration.
Right. I mean, it's legally he can do it. Technically he can do it. Jeff Sessions just said today that he has no reason to believe that he would be part of those conversations, and he has no reason to suggest that it be done. But if Donald Trump perceives this to look like a witch hunt, I wouldn't put it past him. Hopefully his people realize that that would probably send a signal to the Republicans that they need to abandon ship. And so I think it's unlikely.
So is that sort of the nuclear option, if you will, for the president? Or, you know, that seems to be an option of last resort.
I think so. I mean, it's very difficult to find somebody that has gotten through the Senate and has been confirmed unanimously, even in these very partisan times. And Bob Mueller is one of those people. So his integrity is beyond reproach. Not one person in the Senate, Democrat or Republican, has had a negative word to say. I think Donald Trump would be in very, very hot water if he decided to dismiss him. It would look like he was hiding something.
Okay, well, again, it's all investigations all the time down in D.C., but might have seen a little glimmer of movement on the healthcare side of things. Now, this has to do with Kasich's comments about potentially looking at a slow Medicaid rollback as sort of kind of a middle ground to maybe move healthcare forward. Again, any sort of movement or anything that we can expect to see on the healthcare front?
Well, Donald Trump is meeting with 13 Republican senators as we speak. It was a long lunch today, and apparently he was just trying to see where they are and understand where they're thinking. At least that's the word from the White House. I think the senators feel like he's probably trying to push his will a little bit to figure out if there's going to be an outcome here that he could live with and that the conservatives could live with. The Kasich proposal makes it a little bit more amenable to the positions that the moderate Republicans took, and it might placate some of their concerns, but I can't see conservative Republicans going along with that. And, you know, I think that it's a possible opportunity for some degree of compromise, but also pretty unlikely.
Parting thoughts, Dennis Rodman going to North Korea.
I mean, I don't even. The White House says that they're aware of the trip, but it's not official business. He's saying that he hopes to bring sports beyond basketball to North Korea. I am just throwing my hands up in the air. Like, I can't deal anymore. On the list of things that are completely ridiculous going on in Washington, D.C., that doesn't even make the top 10 list.
I'd seen it first in social media, you know, when we've talked about what's going on in the Korean Peninsula, the kind of jokes I've seen tossed about, well, why don't we send Dennis Rodman back? But nothing really had come of his previous trips. I mean, I think everyone's just expecting more of the same.
I think we are expecting more of the same. You know, on top of that, I believe it's today that North Korea was sending back to the United States, a student that had been given hard labor,
Yes.
And has been in a coma apparently since March of 2016. And so the fact that the Dennis Rodman visit is garnering our attention, and overt human rights abuses and imprisonment that is far from acceptable of not only U.S. citizens but also of others abroad, is it garnering that kind of attention is, I think, somewhat unfortunate.
Yes.
I do not believe that basketball diplomacy, in the words of Dennis Rodman, are going to be what really breaks through to Kim Jong-un.
Well, again, I appreciate you being flexible today, Jennifer, and calling in, and I wish you a safe trip up to Providence, and look forward to seeing you on Thursday night here at the Pot of Vote from 5 to 7. So, Jennifer Lawless, we'll let you go back to the task at hand down in D.C.
Thanks. See you
Okay.
Thursday.